Well, here we go. Fortune favors the bold. I know you can make photocopies, it's just not quite the same. Okay, before we get into there, yes, I did tear a page out, and yes, I also think it's a little bit crazy. It was a nudging idea or crazy thing that I just couldn't get out of my head. I had to try. So I did. Not recommending that other people do it. You know, if it spurs something on and you think it might be something, by all means, go ahead. Otherwise, enjoy the video and watch me just make a fool of myself. See you on my screen. Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, we're going to look at the Pokemon box. Now, I wanted to kind of go through the overview of it and some of the takes that I've gotten, how I decided to cut out the image. To start off with, this is an approximate road trip that JCB did when he was younger. The main story is that he took this road trip that was really meaningful to him when he was about 5.5. The stops were Statesville, New Orleans, Houston, the Ozarks, which could be a lot bigger or different of an area, and back to Statesville. Now, the story kind of takes place 5.5 years old. Then 40 years later, he talks about how Pokemon Go is on the rage, and there's just lots of people using that. There's some different facts about it. Then he talks about his treasure cards, that he has some Pokemon cards in the treasure. He then left this box from the precious memory in this road trip, but needed some help from, well, a Pokemon. This is where it gets a little weird. He finds a Froakie in a jazz bar. There's this jar of flies, and then they're listening to John Coltrane. They go into the woods and they meet and discuss other Pokemon, and then eventually find a place to hide it on that trip. We'll look at those Pokemon and some other things upcoming, but pretty much that's the overview, and then he leaves us with this expanded reality image. Let's see what is going down. First off, he had a lot of different things when he was talking about the memories. He had a lot of different animals, and this is where I personally think a lot of the Pokemon references have to do with the animal counterparts that they have. But I think that there's some room for, I guess, interpretation in that. So some of the things he talks about is salamanders, crawdads, grasshoppers, fireflies, dozens of hoppy toads, and his first American eagle. So there's a lot of different things, and he really enjoyed this trip. Now, to get into the Pokemon, he references Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green, which were two games that you could play in Japan. Then in the United States later, there was Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. All of these ones had 150, in quotes, different insects, and then there's one extra, so 151 Pokemon you could catch with these. Now, depending on which game you get, there's a slight difference of like which Pokemon you start with, and so really these ones that came into Pokemon Red and Blue were an updated way, and you had these blue Pokemon to kind of start with versus the green. Now, each Pokemon kind of has their own powers, their different areas they prefer, and a lot of different things there. I am proficient in Pokemon, but I'm not an expert by any means, so feel free to correct me in the comments if I am leaving some important details out. He calls this one out, and one thing that is interesting is why this versus some of the other ones. Froakie, for example, is not one of the ones in this 151 Pokemons, whereas the Golem and some other ones he references, Charizard, Charmander, things like that, are actually in these ones. So is that a way for us to kind of organize Pokemon? It might be. Now, if you don't want that, there are some great references. This one is a spreadsheet that I made, and you can make a copy of it, link in the descriptions. It just pulls information from this website, and you can, without getting too much into the actual spreadsheet part, Google Spreadsheets, you can actually pull the image if you have the correct link to it. So you can see here, these are some of the images of the Pokemon from the game. Now, I do want to include Gen 6, which, is better graphics, different art style, and there's like the Froakie and the Frogadier and Greninja. One thing I didn't mention is they can evolve. So if you have a Froakie and you use him, level him up, he can turn into a Frogadier. And that Frogadier can then eventually go into the Greninja. And they get stronger, more powerful, and have different upgrades. Now from this, I have another resource, which is a Google Docs, which basically has this overview that we just went through. Did not talk about the Nesuki, but I thought that was kind of an interesting little bit there. But I did go through and find the Pokemons mentioned and found a little bit of information on each one, as well as the quote they're in. So I think this could be useful. Again, feel free to correct me if you see something. Some of these are AI summaries, so I did my best to try to say this is AI summary, but I'm good chance that I didn't do that. So just keep that in mind, do your own research, but I think this is fairly accurate. For example, here, he talked about the air feeling hotter than a Charizard's breath. Froakie didn't mind. It would be unlikely to find any fire Pokemon along our way. Could this be a place that's too hot? Could it be something about lizards? Could it be something about, it has to be a place that does not have lizards or is not hot? So lots of interpretations, but that's kind of how I think he was adding these Pokemon references into it. Now, Froakie was the partner that he had for most of the trip. He also included this somewhat AI-generated image. Now, I'm using Site Engine to do these, and I have found it being fairly accurate. That said, do your own judgment on these, because it certainly looks like some AI was added to this, but maybe everything was intentional. For example, this little shape here seems a little odd. Why would that be included and not just blanked out? I'm not sure. Maybe that's a 16%, maybe it's something else, but in any case, the Froakie is there. Greninja is another one, and surprisingly, this one was even less considered AI generated. This could be inaccurate with the image that I used. I did take a picture and then upload it, so maybe using the ebook and then putting it in, you might get a different one, but generally speaking, if it is AI, it usually bumps it up a good amount. So what it is, I'm not sure, but probably some clues in there. Now, the Greninja also has a lot of different parts in there. One of the biggest things is introducing him to the wise Golem, and then he had a great idea of where to hide, and then they circled back. So here again is the evolution chart. There are other ones like Mabastiff, I believe. There's going to be a lot of those. Sorry if I mispronounce any of these. Just roll with it. It was at that moment I heard a loud noise, and I could have sworn it sounded like a Mabastiff. But the Froakie pointed to the sign and said it was unlikely, and we won't see any Boufflant either, just so you know, he added. Which, the Boufflant looks like a buffalo or bison, so perhaps that means we probably won't see one, means there aren't going to be any, or perhaps it's an area, like the Ochita Mountains, or perhaps the Buffalo National River, something like that. Now, there's a Obstagoon, which 3 of them were seen climbing a tree, and then Froakie laughed and said, they're just raccoons. And then it was a relief. He saw a mother raccoon and her 2 offspring peering from about 7 feet up a large oak tree. Now, there is an X on the arm, which seems interesting. There is a Zigzagoon that looks a little bit more like an actual raccoon. So why use one instead of the other? We'll look into that a little further. There's the Kricketune. It kind of looks like a cricket. And in it, spotted a Kricketune, several Yama, 2 Ladybug, or were they hair across? It's hard to remember. There's the Kricketune. There's the Yanma, which seems like it's like this dragonfly meets a helicopter type thing. Liba, which is like a ladybug with 5 black spots, apparently. Heracross looks kind of like the Hercules beetle, or also the rhinoceros beetle. And man, it's just another interesting, like, how could you get that confused? Later on, it talks about the Ninjask. So there are Ninjask everywhere. In the midst of them, I spotted a Pheromosa, which is a strange and beautiful creature. So these ones, could it be that he saw a lot of them because during that time he was there was a swarm like the Broad 5 or another, which is on a 17-year periodical cicada schedule. Just a bunch of them come out. Could be. I thought that was kind of interesting, where maybe all these animals are in a place, or specifically like no dogs allowed. There needs to be a sign there for that. Now, the Pheromosa, I kind of thought it was like a stick bug or something, but it seems like it's actually like the cockroach after molting, has that kind of whitish tint to it. There's the mudkip. It's kind of like this tadpole, mud skipper, axolotl, something like that. The swampart, which was misspelled in it, and they were playing, and it warmed his spirits. Then there's also the golem, and in there he talked about how it circled back and left it from a place where locals turn up from time to time. I'm glad to take a bunch of pictures, which then later on realizes they're all overexposed, but we'll get there. Then there's the Mew, which is one that he talked about earlier on, that it was the really hard extra Pokemon that was very hard to find. There's also the Mewtwo, which is one of the things that's probably in the image. And again, another one of those kind of like last ones, like the number 150, kind of the last quote unquote one. And then the other Mew is even harder to find. Then there's the Magikarp and the Sea King, which were both found as they were going back. There's minnows decorating the water's edge. Witnessed a few Magikarp conversing with a Sea King. Nature was alive all around us. Now, in this, I do like how Pokemon are just, they're organized fairly well. Like, the list that they have, where they're coming from, like up here you can see all the different games that it is. It's just nice. Like, I do enjoy it where things are categorized and things are ordered, like Z to A or A to Z. And yes, so this is most of the Pokemon that was referenced. Hopefully it wasn't too boring here going through, but I feel like seeing them can kind of help, and perhaps that's how we're supposed to interpret the clues. These are some of the texts that I found fairly interesting. This is the most heavily text-based outside of maybe the Forest Fen that had like text poem, but there's just a huge story that I think we have to kind of look into and find. So one is that our excursion would be circular. He talks about how the road trip is kind of going around, and I thought that word usage was interesting. Then he talked about how it was like walking through Kirk's wardrobe, like in Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, or Alice's looking glass. Low-key, I thought it was like the spyglass scene here, but I mean, I do read and I guess know what a looking glass was. Just the treasure hunting in me felt like, oh, that's interesting. I witnessed my first American eagle soaring through the sky. This box description was talking about it was a precise combination of panels must slide to open the box. Then what became a stroke of fortune, they informed me he knew every corner, and they reversed course. They followed each step, and then it was like a 5-year-old again. Again, the forest opened up, an eagle greeted from high above, minnows decorated the water's edge, and a few Magikarps with a Sea King. I even got to witness a few Magikarp. Oh, I didn't do the Magikarp and Sea King. I'll add those and put some pictures on there. The Greninja also introduced me to the Wise Golem, and they had a great idea for where we could go to the treasure. So we circled back. We left the box not far from a place where locals turn up from time to time. And I was glad we had a bunch of pictures so I wouldn't forget this incredible day. Then when he got back, he opened his phone and it was terribly overexposed. Perhaps there was something of expanded reality. I had no idea. So oddly enough, I don't remember taking this photo, but I do reckon it was closer to the end of our day. The snapshot is the only evidence of the adventure that ever happened. Felt the least I could do is share it with you in this book. A lot of text in here, and hopefully in the next few slides I'll explain a little further why I think these kind of come together. But the first thing that I wanted to do, and the first point that I wanted to, I guess, make is this. The part where he jumped back and convinced Scene 3 obstagoons climbing a tree. But the Frocoli just laughed, those are raccoons. Adjusting my eyes, I breathed a sigh of relief as I saw a mother raccoon and her 2 offspring peering at me from about 7 feet up a large oak tree. I think that in the combination of we circled back and we left the box not far from a place where locals turn up from time to time. The only place where there was quote unquote locals that he sort of talked about were these climbing the tree. There's the X on the shoulder. There's even this image, or in the image, someone pointing upwards. So if I was to go out and look for the box, or if I was going to put a bet someplace, I think this box is going to be hidden somewhere up in a tree. And I know that that is debatable on would it be safer in a tree, up a tree versus on the ground? It seems like it would be more unsafe to hide it there. However, John made it clear that he had some pretty secure stuff in it. So what could be more likely, like a tree falling down and squishing a box, or a box falling down from a tree? I mean, that is what I have interpreted that to be. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be looking on the ground as well if I ever go looking for, say, this box. I would just certainly keep my eyes above me. Now, let's jump back to what I was talking about in the introduction of this video. Now, looking at this one, it does look very clear once you see this cylindrical, almost spyglass looking thing. Maybe perhaps that's something we need to do. Even on the kind of corner, and one thing that I've thought about is maybe you need to use something with 3 sides, just like the 3 raccoons, the 3 facing here. Or if you think the box description has to do with a puzzle, maybe you have to make 3 cuts into the image in order to kind of pull a different perspective on it. There's even something interesting here, some other kind of box-like shape, maybe something to do with some mirrors or something else there. But I wanted to take this out so I would be able to actually roll it up and kind of get some different perspective. Now, I put a couple of pictures here. Doesn't quite do it justice to what it actually is in person, but I'll try to do some videos too on here to kind of show what I'm talking about. But to me, this could be the answer to why he's talking about it being circular, as well as the expanded reality. When you look at it like at the side like this, it will actually kind of make it almost shorter. Like it'll make it instead of as long as it was. So this isn't the perfect way, because again, when you have it and actually kind of change it to the circular type of thing here, I feel like you can see a different perspective to it almost. It's kind of bizarre. I haven't found anything that I'm like super clear with. However, a way to kind of put it onto a screen like this would be to kind of put it back into what I would say is maybe regular reality versus expanded. Maybe he took this in like portrait, for example, and then increased the size there and went out. Now, when I look at this, I feel like a lot of the shapes here do feel like they're in like a more true shape, I would say. For like this, for example, looks better when it's shaped there. There are other parts of it that don't quite seem better than when it's increased there. Like I would say almost the lower half feels better. There's also this image that was added to it that, of course, does not look as well. So it might not be exact, but again, it's interesting thinking about it like that. And again, if you're taking the physical book and actually looking at it kind of at an angle, you can kind of see this effect. So again, that's just kind of my perspective on that. Now we'll go through some of the parts that I feel like shows a little bit more, and I'll let you be the judge. Again, if you're not familiar with this, it is very much AI generated, most likely a real photo. And in fact, he did say it is a real photo in an interview, and just put a ton of effects on it. Whatever that looks like, he manipulated this once real place. Now, another thing that I wanted to also take is this raccoon story. He did say that that really happened, and so I feel like that makes this theory less likely in the sense that he was going out trying to hide the treasure, and I believe when in the interview he was saying those 3 raccoons scooted up a tree. Unless he was planning to put it in a tree, or if that was kind of the area he was going for, that seems like kind of the spur of the moment to, whoa, I got scared by raccoons. That's where I'm going to hide the treasure. But could still be in the realm of possibilities if he thought that was clever. Going into it, I did want to kind of look at a couple of Gemini renditions of these photos. This feels a little bit more rocky than I thought. Like I think that this is more of a forest type of thing, but it could very well be like this kind of rocky stuff. This does seem like water to me. Maybe some vegetation, kind of like what you see here, running water, but just taking that in mind. So if you want a quick, like 1, 2, and 3. Again, AI generated, might not be legit. This is kind of what it brings up if you put it in regular reality, which the foresty kind of looks a little more what I was thinking, but to be fair, between the two, the other one seems more realistic than this one. However, could have just been the different prompt that I put in. In this, I have some different spots that I found interesting. For example, this seems like a guitar. You can kind of see it in both renditions, but I feel like it seems more clearly when it's in that contracted or maybe real versus expanded. But to me, that was one of the things when I looked at it sideways that popped out. Second, this eagle. I feel like it very much looks like an eagle head to me, which, like an eagle in a rock, something like that. This one kind of looks like the Pheromosa if you put it like sideways. So if you turn it 90 degrees, I think in the contracted reality even more so. I mean, it to me initially looked like a Hollow Knight bug, but with this, I don't know, I see some resemblance to it. And whether or not that's actually what it is or me just seeing stuff, that middle area certainly has something hidden, in my opinion. Up here, that's a little above that rock, it seems like some sort of like bridge or arch, with that dark part being kind of that bridge. And again, in the contracted way, I feel like you see it a little bit more clearly, or it more correct in that than the expanded. Here, and it is upside down, it does kind of look like this kind of face, and this is where I got an image from the winding staircase, Eagle Rock Loop, which is an area that I find kind of interesting. Here, it kind of looks like some sort of, I don't know, tail plus poofy creature in the front. I don't think these ones are exact on, I don't know, I want to call that one like Lickitung and Mr. Beaver. I know those aren't right, but I forgot to put the words on there, and I'm not going to look them up. Leave them in the comment if you want. But I don't know, that also seems like an interesting shape. Up there, it kind of almost seems like this cave with a path or something. Could be something else as well. And to be fair, you can see it both ways. And this is one that I would maybe argue the expanded almost looks better. Just like I was saying, the kind of the above portion seems more like it. And then this guy, again, definitely added after it was expanded, or whatever edits were made. This came after, which could have been that. It could have been that you're not supposed to do this and squish it. But then there's kind of this like devil cat in the kind of bottomish area. Looks like it's fishing. At one point I think there's like a jazz bar that in New Orleans or something that I was like, oh, kind of looks like that emblem. All that to say, I did want to put a couple of images of Eagle Rock Loop that I found kind of interesting. Now it is near the Ochita Mountains and River, I believe, which is large buffalo or big hunting, good hunting grounds, something like that. And it, I guess, could match up with that. Now, there's some parts that kind of seem like it almost works as a map. I wouldn't say that it is accurate in that sense, unless it's saying kind of this top half. Like that's more of an artistic rendition, I would say, but still doesn't line up enough for me to go, that's totally it. But that is one of the things for these images, to me, kind of seems like maybe he added some sort of outline to it in the bottom portion. Now, he did say it was a real photo, so it kind of depends. How much do you think he's added after the fact that he's edited the photo? Maybe all of it. And maybe these shapes are just shapes that I'm trying to make out of stuff. But nothing else. I thought that this was at least worth putting in there. I did look on the Discords to see if anyone else, and this place was mentioned, The same kind of hesitations that I would have, or why I'm not going boots on the ground there, is there's a lot of water crossings you need to do to get to this spot specifically. So I don't think it would be at this, which I think is called the Peace Mountain on the winding staircase area. The entire trail is like over 10 miles. I want to say like 20 something. So you'd have to kind of have a little more specific area you want to go to. And while there are accessible areas in that kind of area, and maybe the Eagle Rock, if you want to call that, right in the middle of the photo, goes to this, it's a lot of hard hiking and water crossing, which I don't believe you need to do. So again, that's kind of what the Discord was saying too. But I wanted to at least put this up because it was kind of fun trying to find some spots. I don't have enough information or like a clear thing for me to go there, but I'm also not ruling it out at this point yet. Unlikely, but I think there are some possibilities there. It looks like a beautiful area. It'd be fun to hike. So again, that's pretty much all that I have here. I know a lot of it is kind of out there, and like I said at the start, I don't think you need to rip your book out, rip a page out of your book. But to me, it was, what if that was some part of it, that you're supposed to look at it in a specific way. Other things that I would be curious on, but will not do at this point until I have more confidence, is do we have to actually slide this somehow or fold it in some way? I feel like the origami frog is something that's fairly common, at least I did as a kid, and the Japanese connection, plus the precise panels need to slide to open it, to me seems like there might be something in there. If we're taking that this photo was a real photo and he didn't edit it to the point of like breaking parts of it, then I would say maybe that's not what you're supposed to do. Again, I do see, like if you're looking at these, there are some pretty hard lines in a few spots. So maybe there are 3 bends you need to make or 3 folds, something like that. But I don't think it's worth destroying your own copy for. However, it is kind of nice to have it out as its own page. And in any case, hopefully something will stick with you. Hopefully this can help you solve, whether it is finding out what not to do through what I've done, or maybe there's an idea that sparks an idea in your mind, or a clue or a connection that can help you solve the way you're solving. So as always, do those social things like share, subscribe. I do appreciate it. Leave a comment. I'll do my best to get back to you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.